Well, hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode. Tricia, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. It's been an interesting week. I think I talked on previous episodes about a book I've been reading. Just coming to the end of it now, which is the 12-week year,
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
putting together some good plans for the next 12 weeks. I'm going to start my first ever 12-week year on the 1st of February. So by the time this episode comes out, I think this will already be past the 1st of Feb. So yeah, it's going well, and I'm excited. The sort of the process of that the book talks about is looking at your vision, like your overall vision, and then you're sort of like, whether it's like 15-year plan, 10-year plan, 5-year, 3-year, 1 year, all of those kind of things. So yeah, I've been looking at like where I want my poker career to go, where I want the coaching business to go, what do I want at home, like thinking about buying a new house, and
hmm
potentially in the future, like growing as a family, and things like that. So yeah, just making sure that everything's aligned. It's hard at the moment to think about like travel and adventure.
hmm
My girlfriend and I were talking about this and how we want to, we talked about it before, like we want to go to New York. We also want to go to like European cities, and I've been to, there aren't many like the main European cities that I've never been to, that I haven't been to, but doesn't mean that I don't want to go again. So like, the Paris, the Berlins, the
hmm
Prague, Madrid, Barcelona. Like I've been to all these, all of the main ones, Amsterdam, and stuff like that. So yeah, but they're all great, and I really want to just like fly there for a few days and just like sit in the town square and have a coffee or a beer. Like that would be so nice. But yeah, sadly we can't do that at the moment. But we hopefully maybe at the end of this year we'll be able to do that. But I think like the process of coming up with your vision and working out what is it that you really want, what is it that you really aspire to, and making sure that it's actually stuff that you really want to do, not stuff that you think you should do.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
that's the rub, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we make these goals and it's really based on what other people think we should be doing and not what we actually want to be doing. So, yeah, I think that's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So this process was great. Like I wrote down exactly what I wanted and then tried to map it out over a certain number of years. And then I now know what I want to focus on this year. And then I want to break it down even further to like, what are the main things that are going to happen over the next 12 weeks. So there are certain poker concepts that I'm going to be drilling into to improve on, and then business stuff as well. Like obviously this podcast is about poker, like tournament poker strategy and peak poker performance. So I don't want to go too much into like the business side of things. I'm not sure
Right.
our listeners care too much about that, but just sort of highlighting that that's an area of my life I'm going to work on. I'm sure, to be fair though, like I think our listeners like are going to have jobs, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
either they're professional poker players, and that's the main job, but they might have hobbies that they want to improve, like a language or a music, or like learn a musical instrument or whatever. Or you might have goals within like your current job, like where you want to be, like you want to get that promotion, do you want to move jobs, or there can be other things like relationships you want to work on. It doesn't necessarily have to be like intimate relationships. It can be friendships and the relationships you have with your family and stuff like that, especially at the moment that's particularly challenging. So yeah, I think I'm just kind of starting giving you like an overall view of like my vision and where I want to be, and sort of that process. And I sort of wondered if you had any thoughts on sort of the way that you sort of like look at the big picture, look at the vision, and then sort of break it down as like 15, 10, 5-year, 3-year, 1-year plans, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tricky because I think it is kind of difficult to go, oh, this is exactly what I want to be doing in 15 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But of course, you have some ideas, right? Like I'm working with somebody right now who's preparing to retire from a job that he's been at because he's retirement age, and he's going to transition into playing poker professionally. But he doesn't want to, I would say it's more like part-time, but still, professional, right? But so I don't know, 15 years ago he was thinking about this, but he might have been, right? But I like that idea that you have some idea where you want to be. And then the closer you bring it into now, I feel like the clearer you get on it. But one thing I would caution people about, I like the 12-week model. Also, it's 90 days, but you can't do too much in that time frame. That's the only thing. How people, okay, when I say people, I'm really pointing at myself. I'll be like, oh, I want to do this and this and this. And then I make a list of like, I don't know, 12 items or something crazy. And then it ends up not being super effective. So it's better to bust it down to like a couple of things, I think. And so I don't know if you were able to do that, or maybe you don't suffer like I do from the bright, shiny object
going back to what you're saying
syndrome.
about like the 50, like where do you want to be in 15 years? Like, that is hard. Like I'm at an age now where, marriage and kids and moving to a family home and things like that is something that I'm working towards. But like in terms, it's really hard to know exactly where you want to be, what your life looks like. You can have like these dreams and I almost feel like you should dream big because, no, I've always kind of lived like quite modestly, I would say. And my goals have always been quite modest. But like, I almost feel like that's great if you want a modest life. But if you want to be great, like you should be aiming higher. Because, let's say that you, for people who can see what I'm doing at the moment, I'm moving my hand up and down. So, which if you're watching, you already know because you can see it. But for those people who can't see, I like moving my hand up to like a scale system. So, for example, if you aim for, let's just pluck a figure out the air. Let's say you aim for £100,000 a year, $100,000, whatever income, right? And then you land on 70, then, that's okay, right? If, that's, depending on where you are, let's say you start at, I don't know, 25. And you're trying to like, hey, I'm going to get to 100K and you might end up on 70. Like it's good. Like you've gone from like 25 to 70. That's huge. But if you said to yourself, right, I'm going to aim for 1 million, like it might be completely unrealistic, but then you end up at like 180,000. Like, I feel like, the sort of increasing the ceiling can lead to bigger things. Now, it might be completely unrealistic to say to yourself, right, I'm going to make £1 million a year, or $1 million a year, in the next, I don't know, by the 15 years time, that's my goal. But I almost feel like if you do that, there's a bigger room from where you're at to there, and you're going to land somewhere in between. If you set your goals too low, then you might lose motivation, because that's definitely true, that if it's too easy, like you lose the motivation. But also, like, I'm sure you're going to come onto this.
Yes, I am.
But also, like, I feel like, you want to just aim higher, because you'll land somewhere, and maybe you do still end up on the 70,000, but at least you've not limited your potential, I would say. But yeah, let's go, Tricia.
Well, all I wanted to say is you have the right idea, but I wanted to just mention a zone of optimal performance or a zone of optimal functioning. So if the goals are too low, yes, it's too easy, it's boring, it's not motivating, blech, okay? But conversely, if it's too high, then you get at the opposite end of the spectrum where it could be very stressful, it could be overwhelming, right? So, if you look at like a bell curve, and I'm kind of making that bell curve shape right now if you're watching the video, right? So you want to be in the middle of the bell curve, right? So not too low, not too high, but it's kind of like the Goldilocks, of goals. So you've got to get it just right, which is, I think, a little bit tricky. So, and I think I would say the other thing on that is a zone of optimal functioning is going to be different for each person.
Yeah.
Right. That's why when Tony Robbins gets up and he runs his mouth about whatever he runs his mouth about, if you're a fan, don't come for me, but I'm just not into it. It's just like a one size fits all when you go see those kind of people, right? It's like, shoot for the stars, dream big, you can make $1 million. Of course, they do the toxic positivity too. It's like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Doesn't matter what happened to you, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Anyway, so it's not individualized is the point of that little rant.
Yeah.
So make sure you're individualizing it for yourself. And I guess what I'm saying on the 90 days is not like, don't go big. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying you can't work on too many things in a 90-day increment, because you won't be able to get them done. So you really have to think about what's most important and what do I most value. And okay, in 90 days, maybe I've got 12 different goals, but in this 90-day section, I'm only going to work on one, knowing that in the next 90-day section, I'm going to work on something else. So
Yeah, I think it really helps like to home in on your priorities. Like
mhm,
what are the goals that are going to allow you to get to where you want to be?
yeah,
And I think the whole process of doing the whole visions and the year and the plans for a certain number of years,
mhm,
it just really yeah, as I said, helps you home in on what it
yeah,
is that's really really important and the highest value activities or goals that you can
yeah,
achieve that are going to get you there. Because I think that sometimes you can think that something's important, but actually it's like, again, it comes down to like, oh, you think you should be doing this, but actually it's not that productive, it's not that beneficial for where you actually want to be. So yeah, I think it's really important to have that awareness, like find out what your vision is, find out what your values are, and then focus on priorities. And then yeah, within that 12-week cycle, within that 12-week block, you're focusing on the most important things that are going to get you to where you want to be.
yeah, exactly. Well, it sounds to me like you've not only read the book, but you've actually put it into practice, which is something a lot of people don't do. They'll read a book and they'll be like, "Oh, that's a good idea," and then they just put the book away and nothing
Well, that sounds
happens.
like 2020 me, yeah. So hope we this year we're going for 2021 action. Any action, just get it done. Get stuff done.
Yeah, but taking the best parts out of, whatever you're reading or watching and saying, "Oh, how can I apply this?" and then actually, doing something with it. I think that's tremendous.
Yeah. Cool.
Well
Yeah,
done.
I agree. And something I'm going to be focusing on this year for sure. So, yeah, I did get a question in, Tricia. It's all about bankroll management. So, are you
Oh,
ready?
that's a favorite topic of ours.
So it says, "Hi Tricia and Gareth. You've talked about a bankroll management and cash out strategy before, but I was wondering if you could talk some more about it and give us your current thoughts. Love the show. Keep up the great work, Kim." So thanks, Kim, for the message and or the question, I suppose. So bankroll management and cash out strategy. I know that I want to say that we've talked about this on a previous
Hmm.
episode. I feel like I've also talked about it on a stream as well. So the most obvious bankroll management and cash out strategy that springs to mind was one that was written years and years and years ago by Jennifear on Pocket Fives,
Well,
and
you are going back in the time machine now.
but it's one that where the sort of the basic principles I quite like, and we can talk some more about it, Tricia. But the idea is that for MTTs, because that's what I specialize in, you would have whatever your bankroll was, you could divide that by 200, and that would be your max buy-in. And so I think what some people do is they use it as the average buy-in. So let's say that your bankroll was $10,000, right? So they would then divide that by 200, $50. They'd be like, okay, $50 is going to be my ABI. So they play some 20s, some 30s, some 50s, some hundreds, one or two 215s. But the problem with that is if you run really badly at the top end, it's going to affect everything else.
Hmm.
So the other thing is that in MTT, especially if you're playing big field tournaments, 200 buy-ins for your average buy-in is nowhere near enough, I don't think. And that's this is just personal opinion, but I would say that you need a lot more, 300 or 400 times your average buy-in. So if you have like 200 times your max buy-in, it generally works out. Let's say you were playing all the way up to $50 MTTs with a 10k bankroll, but you were playing like the 11s, the 22s, 33s, 44s, whatever in there as well. Then you end up, your average buy-in ends up being like 300 times. You
Hmm.
can take your bankroll and divide it by 300. That would be your ABI. But your ABI isn't that really, it's not that necessary. It's not that relevant. You just want to make sure that you're not risking too much in any one tournament. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that so far, Tricia?
Well, I deal with a lot of more recreational players, and I think a lot of times they don't even know or think about whatever, they'll be like, "Oh, I got my roll up to 10K. I'm going to go play the main event for 10K," which is fine if you have a way to replace that money, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't have a way to replace that money, that's where I think you need to be a lot more deliberate about, how you're approaching this. And if you err on the side of conservative, right, you just are going to, I feel like it's like insurance for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to go busto and then you're like, "Oh crap." I don't have any money.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings about an important point about what your goals are. Like,
Yeah.
again, we talked about like, where do you see yourself in 15 years, or what's the, and working backwards is a good way to do it, because then you can see like where you want to be in a year's time, for example. But if if you want to be a professional player, you've built up a role, let's say it was 10K, 20K, 50K, 100K, whatever, a million, whatever it is. Your job really as a professional poker player is to make sure that you have continued access to funds in order to continue playing this game, right? If you suddenly start playing too high and you go on a massive downswing and your ego gets the better of you and you don't stick to playing the games within your role, well, suddenly the role disappears and then you're trying to find a stake, right? And this is what happens to quite a lot of people. They go broke and they try and get a stake, and then they sort of rinse and repeat, and then they get a win, and then they're like, oh, I've got a roll again, and then they end up playing way too high, and they lose it again. So it's really important that you protect it, and that's why bankroll management is so important. Sort of goes hand in hand with game selection as well, but it's kind of like not just in terms of like making sure that you find the softest, most valuable games, but also make sure that you're not playing games too big for your bankroll. It's just really important that you protect it. So, if you say have, I want to say like a 20K roll, like then you want to protect it. If you have a 3K roll and you could, replenish funds if you went busto, then there's less risk. You can take more risk because it doesn't matter if you go bust. So you might only use like 100 times. You might play up to $30 buy-ins with a 3K roll. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you can continuously, like if you can, you have disposable income where you can put in $3,000 a month, then go for it.
You can, sky's the limit, right? If you can replace that money, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But most of us don't live in that world.
Yeah. So once you get to a point, and you got to work out what that is, maybe one of your goals is to get to a certain bankroll, and it's different for different people. Like if you live in Thailand, for example, then you don't need as big a bankroll as if you're living in Vancouver or Melbourne or Vienna. Like where they're probably, I think they're given the 1, 2, and 3 places to live in the world, I imagine that they're probably the most expensive places to live in the world as well, or at least quite expensive relative to like Thailand or somewhere like that.
Right.
So so all of these things, like depends on what your goals are, what your financial requirements are, if you have another job and stuff like that. So I think having the 200x max buy-in is a good place to start, and we'll make sure that you don't go broke, but just be careful with it, and don't be stubborn. Like if you drop below, so you got your 10K bankroll, officially you can't really play 55s because you would need an 11K bankroll, so you're gonna have to play 44s until you get over 11K, and so you got to be disciplined with that. And you might say, oh no, I'll just flick in a few 55s, and then you run terribly in those 55s, and then your bankroll 6K and you're still playing the 55s, and then suddenly you're like, wow,
then you're like, I got to play the 109s to get that money back.
yeah. Oh, there's a juicy 215. Oh, let's just put that in. Oh,
we know how it goes.
Oh, it's 3 re-entries, brilliant. Let's just max those out, and then suddenly you've got like $9.56 left in your account, and you're wondering what the hell happened.
Oh no!
Back to grinding those 25-cent games. I mean, I don't even know if the maths works on that. It's probably not even enough for that. No, I think it is.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen to people. But I did want to, because it has been a while since you talked about the cash out strategy.
Yeah.
So for people who may not have heard that episode, it's been a while since we did it. Can you just briefly go over that?
Yeah. So the idea is that for you cash out a certain percentage of every buy-in, so that that how much money you're going to cash out at the end of a session, but also you actually see some reward for the effort. Now, I quite like it. Like if you let's say we had the 10K to 20K bankroll, like your goal is to make money, right? So if you never cash out and you just try and grow that bankroll, well, that's good because you end up playing higher. But at what point do you suddenly decide that you're actually going to make some money? Like you're actually going to cash some money out. Like some people, they'll have a big win and they'll cash out like half of it or something like that. But I think it's much better to have this consistent like cash out strategy. So yeah, the idea is that you take out 8%. If you play MTTs, so you play like 180 man runners, 200 plus runner fields, which, you know, big field tournaments are always going to get that, like, you know, going to have 1k, 2k, 10k runners, whatever. You cash out 8%, and you know, so you play, I don't know, $10,000 worth of games in a month, and you cash out $800, and that's your like your, you know, whatever the income from playing that month. And hopefully your ROI is higher than 8% in the games that you're playing, so that you actually are still continuing to grow your bankroll. Now, if your ROI is less than that, then you're going to be losing money, and therefore it's the system, the bankroll management system, strategy, whatever, is going to move you down in stakes. So, you know, you always need to be making more than 8% in the games you're playing. So if you're not, then you end up dropping down where you're probably going to make more money. I guess the only thing with MTTs is the variance is so high, so there is this kind of like, you will be moving up and down relatively quickly within MTTs. I think that, like, originally that the bankroll management and cash out strategy was written for sit and goes and smaller field MTTs, like the 180 mans, because one of the goals with it says, like, it prevents you from moving up and down too quickly or too frequently. But I think that if you play tournaments, you know, you might see that, like, it depends how many tournaments you play in a session, but if you're playing, like, you know, a few $1,000s worth of games, like, you know, that's going to have an effect on, you know, if you brick a big Sunday and you've lost $4,000, I mean, that takes $20 off your API, right? That's a pretty big drop, right?
So I reckon you don't just have to go, I'm going to take 8%. You could also move that percentage down. Right.
Oh, you could do. You can choose what that number is. And it can be higher than that as well. If you feel like you're crushing games for like 50% ROI. The thing is, though, you want to cash out, but you also want to grow your bankroll, because eventually, like, imagine you have like $1 million bankroll and you can play 50k buy-ins. Is that right? No, 5Ks. 5Ks.
Yeah, 5Ks.
5K times 200 is $1 million. Quick maths. Then you play 5Ks and then you're cashing out 8% of that, which is $4,000, right? No, $400. Wow, this is terrible for anyone listening to this. We apologize for my maths.
Get the calculator.
Trisha's not even taking part. She's not going to risk it. She's not going to risk this poor maths.
I'm just going to sit back and watch this train wreck.
We have this thing in England called A-levels, which is what you do when you're 18 years old. And I did A-level maths, right? So this kind of mental arithmetic should be like pretty easy, but somehow it's not. Okay, so we're playing our 5Ks, right? And the 8% of that is $400. So then you're cashing out $400 a game. Maybe you don't get to play 5Ks that regularly, but you're still cashing out $400 a game. Let's say you play, I don't know, 100 of them in a month, maybe. Then you're making 40 grand in a month, and then you're suddenly like, wow, this is big, right? And then again, we've got to think about what's realistic. I'm just sort of like throwing some numbers out there to give you an idea. So, like, if you cash out too much from your bankroll, you end up limiting your growth or potential growth. So you want to cash out a bit to sort of see the reward, because I think it's like, if you just play forever and never actually cash any money out, what's the point? Like, you know, you've got to see some reward for your efforts. And, you know, you could think long term, and you could think, well, if I don't cash any money out, you know, I'm going to have a much bigger bankroll in 10 years time than if I cash out. But you're not going to have anything to show for it apart from a bigger bankroll. And then, okay, you could, you know, enjoy the fruits of your labor then. But I think you want to see some reward earlier on. But yeah, what are your thoughts, Tricia?
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were talking about the 8%, that some people might be better off, you know, going down to like 5%, just because then they wouldn't necessarily have to lower the buy-in amount.
Yeah, so maybe, I think that on average, like, your ROI should be, you know, a lot higher than 8% in MTTs.
Let's just pretend, okay, that you're playing on Poker Stars and the bots are getting you.
But if, I think that if you're not getting that, then that's the whole point, is that the system will drop you down until you're making enough money, right? So you, so like if you're not beating $50, $100 games, then it'll drop you down to the next level, and until you are making that much. Of course, this is just one idea. Like, this is, you know, I'm not saying that this is the only way that you can ever approach bankroll management and reward for your efforts. It's just something that I I quite like, and definitely recommend looking for the article. Just search for Jennifear bankroll management cash out strategy, pocket fives, on Google.
But it seems like, when you were mentioning the 5,000 buy-ins, right? Like you do get to a point where you cannot, like you might be rolled for days. There's guys that are like that, right? Where they've got loads of money, not necessarily from poker, but like we see these business guys and stuff, but there's only so many of those high buy-in events you can play.
That's
right?
true, yeah.
So that's something, you're balancing out, like where is your sweet spot? So it comes back to that zone of optimal performance, right? It's also a zone of optimal buy-in, right? Because it's too low, you're going to be bored. If the buy-in's too high, you're going to be chewing your fingernails in fear, right?
Yeah.
But it also has to be, something you can play enough volume in, because I don't know, does Bill Perkins really know what his ROI is on $100,000 plus buy-in games? Like how many can he have played?
Well, yeah, tough. It's really tough to
right?
know. Yeah. So I think that, it brings about an important point for, why another reason why bankroll management is so important, because you want to make sure that you're not, not pulling the trigger on a triple barrel bluff or calling down on the river in a big spot, deep in a tournament, because you're, the buy-in means too much, or the payout, the prize pool is, so big. So I think it's, you're playing in a game that's comfortable. You don't mind losing. I mean, it's the whole thing, like never gamble with anything that you can't afford to lose. You got to be comfortable losing it as soon as you hand it over.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, an important, public announcement, or whatever the expression is. Don't just make sure that you're playing within your means, because but yeah, you're going to play your best at a point where the money means enough to you, like you've just talked about, Tricia. It means enough to you, but it's not going to like be the end of the world if you lose it. Now, if you're playing, I used a $50 buy-in level just as an example again. You're playing $50 buy-ins, and that's what kind of where you're most motivated and where you feel like you're playing your best, and you feel like the individually like $50 is not going to affect you, because you're practicing good bankroll management. But then then someone says, oh yeah, you should play like a $2 tournament. You're just gonna be like, well, what's the point in that? Like, I don't see the reward from that. And the thing with the cash out strategy is that you should be trying to aim towards the top of your buy-in as much as possible. Of course, that would increase your ABI, but if you're playing $50 tournaments, you don't want to be playing $5 tournaments. You're going to be cashing out hardly anything from those, when you have a potential to cash out much more playing the bigger buy-ins. So yeah, it's really important that you practice good bankroll management and understand the reasons as well, so you can play your best poker, but also treat poker as a business where you're looking to give yourselves opportunity to grow.
Speaking of treating it like a business, do you recommend that people cash out once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month? Does it matter? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I'm just trying to remember what the article says. I mean, I've obviously got some thoughts myself. I think the article originally says that you want to cash out as soon as you have the minimum allowed by the site. So if the site, I don't know, site's $10 or $15, then you cash out straight away. I think that it's worth waiting till the end of the week, so you're cashing out a nice amount. But of course, like if you brick loads of sessions in a row, and then at the end of the month you like withdraw even more, and then you're just like, well, where's my bankroll gone? And also, like, you're not aware that you should be dropping down because you've had this bad run and you've cashed out loads. So I think I would advise people to do it. I mean, it depends how much you're cashing out, but at least once a week, but maybe even every session as well. So you're seeing that that constant reward going into your account, and also like you are much more aware of what your bankroll is currently. You're not worried that like, oh, I've been on this really bad run, I've got to cash out $2,000 at the end of the week, and that's going to drop my roll even more. And so, what games am I playing? Like, I don't know where I should be. So I think you want to just be aware of your finances, at all times.
That's why I like live poker, because there's nothing like going and cashing and getting that big old brick of cash in your hand.
Very true.
It's way better than electronic cash.
Yeah, when I had that win in Vegas, I came second in the 350 six max at Planet Hollywood. They said they could give it to me in cash or a check. And
be like, girl, I'm not taking that check. How do I know that thing's any good?
Well, I did take the check because I don't want to be taking 23 grand in cash around with me. And I think that you can only transfer like 10,000 or something in when you go on a plane, right? You have to declare it.
Yeah,
if
I
it's
think
over
there's some
10,000
rules.
and
I
stuff.
think there are some rules about that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, give me my bricks of money.
Yeah,
I have cashed out at the Real Casino a couple times for, not like $1 million or something, but
yeah,
20 grand, something like that.
Yeah,
I'm like,
this- I
look
just
at
said
me making it rain.
I just said 23. Actually, the score was like just under 17. But yeah, they did write me a check, and it did come through. I remember getting a letter from the IRS though. That was a bit weird.
Oh,
given
yeah.
that I'm not, I don't pay tax in the States. But I
Yeah.
have, it's quite interesting that they're quite on it, aren't they, when it comes to tax and money and
They're gonna
in the
get theirs.
States.
Yeah, one time I did have a win it was just about 100,000, and I did take that as a check, but it would have been fun.
But you had to pay
fill up
loads
my
of tax
backpack.
on that, right?
Yes, I did have to pay a good amount of tax on that.
Yeah. So we're quite
yes,
lucky
I
that
did.
I didn't have to pay any tax, but I had to fill in a special form.
Mhm.
So that there was a few hoops to jump through for that, but it was worth it in the sense that I didn't have to then try and claim this tax back through
Yeah.
some other mechanism.
It's so funny because at a lot of the casinos, what they'll do is you'll get whatever place you get, right? And they'll give you the dirty chips, and then you have to take the chips to the cage, and you have to trade them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of gross. No wonder we have COVID.
Well, yeah.
Chips are so gross,
Well,
right?
quite.
I'm thinking about like back in the day. I used to go over and play at the Golden Nugget, and they would do that, right? So they give you the dirty chips, and then you trot them around,
Yeah.
to the cage.
The Golden Nugget is it's an entity into itself.
Well, I thought the Golden Nugget was going to be like before I ever went to Vegas. So keep in mind, this is a long, long time ago, but I thought, oh, this is going to be really skanky. Like nothing good could be in old downtown Vegas, but actually the Golden Nugget, well, I haven't been there in a few years, but at this time, the Golden Nugget, it was pretty nice, honestly.
Yeah, well, where they have the tournaments is like the conference room or
it's like a ballroom.
Ballroom, yeah. It's actually really nice. Yeah, it's
it's not bad. And there's a little sushi restaurant right
there's
outside.
There's another, I think there's a Japanese, I think, there as well. Like it's some really good. Oh yeah, it's
some good stuff over there.
It's making me just want to go for that.
Like, don't sleep on the Golden Nugget, people.
No, absolutely. Good cash games there as well, by the way, guys. If you
very
thinking
good
about it, it's definitely worth a visit.
Well,
on that note, Tricia, let's wrap things up. Where can people find you?
I wanted to say like sushiusa.com because I loves me some sushi. But I'm going to say peakpokermindset.com was probably a better place to hunt me down. Go check it out over there. I've got a downswing course. I've got how to stop procrastinating course. I've got a tilt course coming very soon for all you people who are going crazy with the tilt.
Cool.
So peakpokermindset.com. Come check it out. How about you, Gareth?
So head on over to mctpokerschool.com. We've got everything on there from coaching applications, group coaching, the classroom, which is where you can access all of my courses and modules. So definitely check that out. We'll post a link in the description. But if you want all of the links to everything, including the social media, then go to mctpokerschool.com.
I can't wait for us to get back to Vegas so I can take you around all the sushi places I love.
Yeah, well, we checked out some great Japanese places when we were there. I actually went to a Korean barbecue place as well, which was super. Like, shout out to my my friend Paul. He took me there. It was like, yeah, it was so good. You cook the meat in front of you, and then just pictures of beer. That's always what made me love like North America. It happens in Canada as well, as the States, like bringing pictures of beer. Like you can get pictures here, but it wasn't something that I was that familiar with. Like generally you just go and order a pint at the bar.
Yeah.
Whereas now you could, they come to the table and they bring you a picture, and you don't have to order any more beer for half an hour.
Half an hour.
Who am I kidding? 6 hours. Flat as a pancake. So yeah, it's a great experience. I'm looking forward to that aspect. Like that's one of the greatest, like, my summer in Vegas in 2019, not sure I've mentioned it much on the podcast, but it didn't go particularly well results wise. But like
I thought you were going to say it was off the chain because we had so much fun.
Well, I had so much fun in that we went and had so much good food. Like, it's, the social aspect of going to Vegas and seeing people is, the people that you don't necessarily see for, a year, like since the Vegas the last time, or the last poker trip you went on, and I don't go on that many. Like I might go to Rosvadov, or might go to Nottingham to play and at DTD, but I don't tend to play too many live events. So it's good to see those people and go for beer and food. So yeah, let's fingers crossed that something will happen. Maybe not this year. I think we're looking at 2022 now for the World Series back in the Rio.
I just hope that Vegas has a reputation, and it's well deserved, for really fantastic food. And I hope all these restaurants and chefs and things make it through all
that's
this,
true,
so
actually.
we can see them on the other
shame.
side.
Yeah, if they haven't.
Yeah,
that's.
I know they'll be back, but yeah, I'm just crossing my fingers because the food is just, it's good, and I love to eat. So
yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's wrap things up there, Tricia. It's been fantastic talking to you once again.
You too.
And
talking about sushi and poker, money, all my favorite things. Yes.
Yeah. And everyone else out there, take care, and we'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.